Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am doing the highly anticipated and highly asked for video about carb cycling. A lot of you guys have asked me about carb cycling. Whenever I do a Q&A or anything that has to do with how I cycle my carbs, how I've done it in the past, how you should do it, or for fat loss, I get a lot of questions about it. So it's kind of hard for me to really just put out like one set of information or answer just one question, because carb cycling can be very different for everybody. A lot of people do it very differently, so I will explain to you how I've done it, my personal experiences with it, what my clients' experiences with it, and why it is beneficial if you want to do it as well. So first things first, what even is carb cycling? Carb cycling is when you have carb amounts for your daily intake that are lower on certain days and higher on certain days. That's about it. People sometimes will lower their protein or lower their fat, or increase their protein or increase their fat, depending on if they're doing a lower or a higher carb day. I don't personally, I never really did that, just to kind of keep things more simple. Just changing the carbs is going to have the same effect as it would if you change your protein or fat around, but I kind of just like to keep it simple and make sure the carbs are low enough for me to be in a deficit, and that's kind of what I'm going to explain to you guys. So if you're considering doing carb cycling, you're not really sure why it works, I'm going to try to explain it to you just with like a little example that I've heard in the past and I thought was interesting and really helpful, and I'm going to explain it to you using my scrunchie. Sounds a little weird, but so I'm going to go ahead and say that my top finger is metabolism, is your metabolism. My bottom finger down here is your calorie intake. So I'm going to talk about first why a normal fat loss diet, or your calories are just at one set level and you're continuously decreasing them, why it works, but then also why it stops working using this example. So if you have your metabolism here and it's starting up here, your calorie intake is starting here, so you lower your calorie intake initially to start losing fat. Some people drastically lower their calorie intake. You see there's like tension on the scrunchie here. Some people drastically lower their calorie intake, and sure, you're gonna slowly lose weight. So think of like the screen as being like your weight loss. I know it's kind of confusing, but it helped me. So you start up here, you drastically lower your calorie intake, and you slowly lower it, and you're gonna lose weight. But your metabolism, if you're following my top finger, the metabolism, as your calories are lower, 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 all at the same steady level, your metabolism goes with it. So by the end of your low carb or low calorie intake diet, your metabolism is going to be super slow by the end of it. And when you're trying to, and so if you're thinking of a contest prep and your calories are always just super low, if you're trying to get back up afterwards or have a healthy metabolism after your show, it's going to be a lot more difficult because your metabolism is all the way down here. If you do carb cycling or implement carb cycling into your fat loss diet, you're going to start here, you're going to slowly lose weight, and then when you get to a certain point, your metabolism might start to slow down, or you might have like a plateau of fat loss, which means that you're continuously losing fat and then you kind of stop and you have more trouble losing fat than you did when you started. That is a plateau. That is when your hormone or fat burning hormone levels slowly decrease along with your calorie intake, and so does your metabolism. So it makes it a lot more difficult to continue burning fat. So when you have carb cycling, or you have a refeed day, which same thing, I asked my coach that before, refeed days, high carb days, those are essentially the same thing, but the frequency and the amount that you do them depends on how lean you are and how your body responds to carbs. I'll talk about that in a second. Regardless, when you're coming down here and then you increase your calorie intake up here on your higher carb day, your metabolism is going to jump back up a little bit, and so are your fat burning hormones. So essentially at the end of the day, instead of your metabolism slowly going down like this, it's gonna kind of steadily go like this, and you're gonna continue to be able to burn fat at an efficient rate. You're going to be a fat burning, furnace. You're going to be able to eat more food and still burn fat with the higher carb days, and not only are they going to help you continue burning fat, but they're going to help you mentally. They're huge, especially when you're on prep and you have a couple of low carb days. Like, if you don't have any higher carb days to look forward to during your week, or any refeed days, or any cheat meals, which I talked about cheat meals in one of my Q&A videos. I don't do cheat meals for prep anyway, but I do structured refeeds and high carb days. If you don't have any of that to look forward to, how do you mentally just like continue going for that long of a time? You're just gonna get burnt out. It's going to be awful. You might be a little bit miserable. So instead of your calorie intake slowly decreasing along with your metabolism, and it's pulling down your metabolism to make it slower, you're going to do some low carb days, increase your calorie intake. It pulls up your metabolism a little bit. Do it again, and do it again. You see what I mean? Does that make any sense to you guys? Another thing about carb cycling, and when you're dieting and you're on low calories, you can kind of tell because our bodies aren't meant to thrive on low calories and low carbs. Carbs are our #1 source of energy and fuel. So when you're dieting on low carbs, yes, it's going to help you get more lean, but your body also pays attention to that and notices, and lowers your fat burning hormones to compensate for the lower carb amounts. Your body essentially, when you're dieting, does everything humanly possible to hold on to as much body fat as possible, because it wants to hold on to the fat, and it feels like it's going into starvation mode. That's kind of a different story, starvation mode. People use that a lot of the time. It's not necessarily going into starvation mode in like a few low carb days, but after weeks and weeks of dieting, your body really just wants to hold on to fat, and it's going to do what it can to do that. So it lowers the fat burning hormones that you have in your body naturally. When you bring your calories back up, and it's like, and you feed your body again, your body increases those fat burning hormones. So those hormones are your thyroid hormones, your leptin levels, your ghrelin levels. You're going to be less hungry because you're doing that, because when you're on lower calories, you're going to be more hungry, you're going to be less satiated. So higher carb days and cycling your carbs and implementing refeeds are going to help continue to keep those fat burning hormones stabilized, if that makes any sense to you guys. So a lot of people also kind of ask, how do I know what my low carb days should be and what my high carb days should be? There's not a correct answer for me to just say blank, you should make sure your low carb days are 30 to 60 grams below your high carb days. You know, everyone's body's so different. Male and female are so different. Some people are more carb sensitive, some people are less carb sensitive. Like, for example, my friend Mike, his low carb days are 400 carbs and his high carb days are 800 carbs. Yeah, you heard me right. So I can't tell everybody, yeah, just double your carbs on your high carb day. It just does not work like that for some people. Like for me, if I doubled my carbs on my high carb day, my body probably wouldn't be able to handle it, because that's just not how my body works. And it's not how a lot of people's bodies work, so I can't say blankly, put your low carb days at this and put your high carb days at this. Now, if you have been macro tracking for a while and you are at a consistent level, you know where your maintenance is, you can experiment a little. I encourage you to experiment and try something different. Go check out my What If I Fail video if you're too nervous to try something different, and like, what if it's wrong? Just try it. What's the worst that can happen? Your body doesn't respond right and you have to go back. Just try something new. If you have a number that you're comfortable at for your carbs, I would make your high carb days a little bit higher and your low carb days a little bit lower, and see how your body responds. Again, you can't really say what a set number would be for everybody, but I would encourage you to experiment and see what works best for you. So during prep, my low carb days were pretty low and my high carb days were pretty high. At the very, very end of my prep, I was very lean, and the more lean that you are, the higher your carb cycling, the higher your high carb days or refeed days can be and probably should be in order to replenish those hormones, and the more frequent you might need higher carb days. So when you're more lean or when you've been dieting for weeks or months, you might need high carb days 2-3 times a week, depending on how long you've been doing it and how lean you are and how much more lean you're trying to get. Your body really needs that that replenishment of the hormones and to jump your metabolism back up. But if you're just starting dieting and you're carb cycling, you might not even necessarily need to start with a carb cycle. You might continue losing fat on just a single macro range or a single carb range, but then when you start plateauing, you might need to play around with those carbs a little bit more. So again, if you've been tracking your food for a while, you can use that and then go a little bit higher, a little bit lower, see how many times a day or how many days a week you feel comfortable or with doing higher carb days, and take 2 or 3 weeks to see how your body responds and move on from there. If you haven't carb cycled ever, if you haven't tracked your macros ever, I'd highly recommend starting with a single macro range. See where your maintenance is, take that single macro range and do it for 2 to 3 weeks to figure out if your body responds to those macros or if they work for you. And you're going to figure that out based off of if you're gaining weight, or if you're losing weight too quickly, how you feel after those 2 to 3 weeks. Like, did I gain a little weight? Did I lose a little weight? Did I stay the same? If your weight stayed the same, if you look the same, that's probably where your maintenance is. So from there, I would do that to start and then move on and experiment from there. Depending on how lean you're trying to get, for example, if you're doing a competition prep and you're trying to get stage lean, carb cycling isn't always going to be fun. It's not going to be the most exciting thing, especially when you have low carb days. Those low carb days can be pretty draining, so you really have to have some mental strength if you're doing a prep. That's huge regardless, especially if you're trying to get really lean. Your body just doesn't thrive off of low carbs. It doesn't thrive off of low calories. So you're going to feel a little bit of fatigue. You're not going to have as good of a recovery. You're gonna probably need a little bit more sleep. You're gonna be needing a lot more water. Your training might not be like as up to par as it usually is, but again, those high carb days, those refeed days are really going to help that. I think that's all I have to say to you guys about carb cycling. If you have any more questions, or if I didn't cover something in this video, please comment below and let me know. And yeah, okay. Anyways, yeah, definitely just let me know in the comments, and if you liked this video, please share it with your friends and anybody who you think would benefit from watching this video, or if you know other people who have had questions about carb cycling in the past, refer them to this video, and it really helps me and my channel grow, and it helps me just reach more people in that way. So I really appreciate all of you guys' support. Subscribe if you haven't already, and give this video a thumbs up. Oh my god, I look jacked today, huh? It's this tank top. Alright, thanks for watching, guys.